What's up, my name is Daniela and welcome to a new video. So in this video I'm going to talk about my 2019 reading stats. Yes, it's an exciting time. I adore stats, I love making them and talking about them and watching other people's videos with them, and I think you can learn a lot from them. Like obviously what you read, but also you can learn if you fulfilled your goals and what goals you should set for the next year. So yeah, they are very fun and very useful in my opinion. And I had a lot of fun putting these together, so I hope you will enjoy as well. I read a total of 79 books in 2019, which is kind of dumb number to work with. I thought it was 80, but then I found out that Goodreads counted one book twice. So it's actually 79, but oh well. We're just going to work with it, and yeah, without further ado, let's look at all of the stats I have. So the first chart I have here is how many books in a month I read. So, you know, I think that 2019 was a pretty great reading year, not so great life year, which is kind of reflected in some of the months, but yeah, it started pretty strong in the first quarter. Then I had a huge high in April because it was the Magical Readathon, the Owls edition, so I completed all of the Owls and one extra book, so I read 13 books in total. And then, as you can see, it went down. So the summer was not so great, and there was like a slight improvement in August because it was Magical Readathon, the news edition, but I failed that. But if it weren't for the Magical Readathon, I definitely wouldn't read even 7 books. Then in September I was moving, and yeah, it was a lot. And then at the end of the year it went up again. December was a solid month with 10 books read. So yeah, it is pretty uneven, but yeah, I think that a lot of the things have an explanation, so it's very interesting to see, at least for me. Let's look at the star rating next. So I really had a good reading year because I had 0 1-star books and only 5 2-stars. The highest amount is 4 stars. Yeah, 19 5-stars seems like, I don't know, a decent number. A lot of people say that they want their star rating to go down, which I guess it means like they want to read more widely and more critically, I guess, but I think that I read pretty eclectically already and that I just want to pick up books I think I'm going to enjoy. Obviously I branch out quite a lot, and yes, so I actually think that it's a good thing that I have so many 4 stars and 5 stars, although in the last year I really wanted to like rate a little bit more critically and not give 5 stars to books that I wasn't sure about if they were 5 stars. I don't know if I succeeded. I think that maybe yes. Then we have the genres, and this is really interesting. Well, number 1 is still contemporary. That's still my favorite genre. But I was so pleased to see non-fiction in the second place, so 21 non-fiction books is amazing. My goal was actually 12, so I surpassed that. Also, third place, fantasy. Well, probably because I was rereading Harry Potter, but never mind, it's nice. Then we have crime, mystery and thrillers, so 9 books is good. I really like this genre, but I realized that I really don't like reading about certain topics, and that in order to read these books and enjoy them I have to be in the right headspace, because in certain circumstances they could make me anxious or something. So yeah, then we have some sci-fi and dystopian, only 3 historical, and that's like Daisy Jones is historical and Everything I Never Told You is historical, and then 1 book I read for work, so only 1 poetry book, which I would like to read more poetry, definitely. 1 classic, and it was a children's classic. I don't set goals for myself to read classics because I don't want to force myself to do so. I studied literature, so I read a ton of classics, and yeah, I just want to read them if I want to. And in the last place is One Magical Realism. Then we have the audience, and this year it was pretty obvious that I prefer reading adult books. I think it's partly because I read so many non-fiction books that are most of the time for adults, but yeah, adult is definitely my preferred audience, but I still enjoy reading some young adult and also some middle grade. One of my intentions for the last year, but also for the new year, is to read authors I already read something from and that I loved, because I often kind of forget to do that. So you can see that 46 of the books I read were by an author that was new to me, and 33 was by an author I already read something from, which is a pretty good score, I would say. We also have a chart for if the book was part of the series or it was a standalone. So 25 books were a part of a series and 54 were standalones. I definitely prefer reading standalones. I mean, I've been getting into more series, but I just have like a lot of problems with reading series. So this year I want to concentrate a little bit more on finishing the series I want to finish, because if I don't continue very soon, I will lose most of my interest and I will forget almost everything. So yeah, I have to concentrate on that and wrap up some of the series I started. I also want to start some new series, so yeah. Then we have a chart for rereads. So only 6 books were rereads, but okay, I say only, but I'm not that big on rereading, so it's actually a pretty high number. Okay, 4 of them were Harry Potter books, but still, like some years I didn't reread anything, so it's pretty good, I would say. Then for the source of the books, so you can see that the biggest portion of the books I read were from the library, 27, and the second biggest source was SCRIBD. And I was really happy to see this because obviously I pay for it every month, so I'm really glad to see that I actually use it. SCRIBD and audiobooks in general help me so much with my reading and to read in more situations. For example, I get migraines, so I can't physically read, but I can listen to audiobooks, which is great. 17 of the books I read were owned, and this might sound like a low number, but the fact is that I keep my physical TBR small, so I don't have a problem with a big physical TBR, and my intention is to read books I actually want to read. So, like, obviously books from my physical TBR, but since I don't own that many books, it's logical that a lot of them will be coming from other sources like the library or SCRIBD. So 6 books from NetGalley, and this is very bad because I have many books that I need to read and review for NetGalley, and also 1 book I read for work. Then I have the setting of the book, which is a difficult thing to track sometimes because some of the books take place like in various places, etc. But as you can see, most of the books I read were set in the US, and I also counted non-fiction with this because like non-fiction don't have a setting, but if the author is American, chances are they are talking about American culture, or they are mentioning some things that are specific to Americans, etc. So if the author was American or British or whatever, I counted like their country or the culture they were talking about as the setting. So yeah, that also ranked this up. The second place is the UK, then fantasy world, dystopian world, space, and yeah, then some other places in the world. Okay, then I track the format of the books. So most of the books I read were physical, but on the second place there were audiobooks, which again is great, and only 7 ebooks, which could be definitely better because 1, I have a ton of NetGalley books and I like reading on Kindle. So yeah, let's see if I read more ebooks in 2020. Also for fun, I have a sub-format of the physical books, so 39 were paperbacks and only 7 hardcovers, and 1 was like printed papers. That was the book I read for work, so it wasn't like published yet. But yeah, I love paperbacks, and the majority of books I borrow from library are paperbacks, so it works out nicely, I think. In this chart you can see that I read only 2 books that were like graphic novel or comic. That I would say is less than in previous years. I like reading graphic novels or comics, but there aren't that many that I'm interested in my library, and they are very expensive, so I usually don't buy them. Yeah, I don't own any, so I just don't come across them usually. It was funny when I was putting this together, and like I only had graphic as the title, and I was like filling out the fields for all of the books I read, and I read some adult romances and like graphic. Well, yeah, definitely yes. Then also another one that was really interesting for me is the year the book was published. So I read 13 2019 releases, which I think it's really great because I didn't buy that many books in 2019, and my library is pretty slow at acquiring new releases, and they don't stock most of the books I'm interested in that are coming out. So it's great that I was able to keep up with at least some new releases. And also 18 of the books I read were from 2018, which is also very great. Then the majority of books I read were from 2010 to 2017. 11 books were from 91 to 2010, and 91 was the year I was born, so that's why it is there. And yeah, only 2 books that were published before I was born. Now for the gender of the authors, so you can see that I read predominantly by female authors, which is great. I'm happy about the ratio between female and male. I could read definitely more books by genderqueer people, so I could definitely work on that. And 4 of them were books that had more than 1 author. I didn't do the charts for any other like diverse categories because, to be honest, it was pretty abysmal. Like, I thought that I read more diverse books. I mean, a lot of the books I read are diverse in some form or another. Like, there are some side characters who are people of color, or queer characters, or have some mental health issues or a disability. But I definitely want to read much more than what I read in 2019. And I was especially surprised by how few books had a queer protagonist, because, well, I am queer and I love queer stories, and it's good for me, it's good for the authors, it's good when I talk about them, so, you know, it's amazing all around. But I guess that a lot of the books that are already on my TBR aren't diverse, and I'm still very excited to read them, but I really have to get intentional about picking up books that have queer protagonists or person of color or the other types of diversity, because yeah, I would really love to do that. So hopefully this will improve in 2020. Okay, a couple of final charts. So we have language. I read books in 2 languages, English and Czech, and as you can see I read 7 books in Czech, but that doesn't mean that they were Czech literature, as you will see in a second. Here we have the original language, so 77 books were originally in English, and only 1 was in Czech and 1 was in Japanese. Hello, Marie Kondo. And then there is the translated chart, so 6 of the books I read were translated and 73 were in their original language. I realized I forgot to do the Goodreads thingy, so yeah, let's do it now to wrap this up. So these are my year in books data, and yeah, I read 79 books. The shortest book I read was Binti by Nadia Okorafor, which had 96 pages, and the longest book was Little Wahid by Robert Galbraith, which had 650 pages. I was surprised that this wasn't the Final Empire, but then I looked and the Final Empire had like 647 pages, so it was really close. The most popular book was Harry Potter Book 1, not surprising, and the least popular was The Stopping Place, which, yeah, should stay this way probably. My average rating was 3.8, and I already talked about how I'm pretty satisfied with this rating. It actually got down. It used to be like 4.1. I think it's still higher like in the overall statistics on Goodreads, so it's going down a little bit, but also I'm still very much enjoying myself and enjoying the books I am picking up, so I think it's pretty good right now. Highest rated was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Yeah, why is there not the lowest rated? I don't know. Well, the first book I read was Illuminating by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and the last one was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. Both of them were 4 stars, so not bad. So yeah, these are all my stats for 2019. They showed me some things I'm very happy about and also some things that I should definitely work on. Let me know your thoughts about stats. Do you like them? Do you do them? Or do you have any thoughts about my stats? But yeah, that would be all for this video. If you want to follow me on social media, there are links to my Goodreads, Twitter and Bookstagram in the description. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!